القنبلة وارمي عليه القنبلة كان دخان أول جلس 5 دقيقة 10 دقيقة كده بعدين جاب هبتين القنبلة كان نار.
I remember one evening mentioning to a fellow inmate, everyone here is being so nice to me, and you know, it was just hard to expect what you might find in a Syrian prison. And he said, Sam, in Syria, all the good people are here in prison because all the bad people are outside putting us in here.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. Today, Yemen, Palestine, Israel, Syria, and Burma. We have talked many times about Yemen, where the US and Saudis ravaged the country. But that doesn't mean we hold a candle for Ansar Allah, or the Houthis, as they're better known in the West.
قفل عليه الباب قالوا أنا أرجع لكم دقيقة بس ادوني دقيقة أنا بوريكم. بعدين راح شال القنبلة وارمي عليه القنبلة كان دخان أول جلس 5 دقيقة 10 دقيقة كده بعدين جاب هبتين القنبلة كان نار رموه داخل بعدين قفلوا عليه احترقوا خلاص. طالب أول شيء دلهن احترقنا ما نشتي نحترق مرة ثانية. اللي حصل في صنعاء أول شيء بداية الحرب هذه وقالوا نحن ما نأكل أكل، نحن تجي أو تسفرونا أو تخرجونا، نحن سفرونا ما نجلس كذا بدون أي ذنب، نحن ما فعلنا شيء.
Note that in the video, the protesters charged that 400 were burned in the fire. Ansar Allah says it apologizes for the killings, but we don't know if it has punished anyone responsible for the atrocity. The Israeli paper Haaretz reports on an incident where settlers are suspected of burning Palestinian cars. What's remarkable about the incident is that it is a supposed revenge for an Israeli who died in a car accident when he was running from Israeli police. It took place near the Palestinian town of Beit Iksa. Police had been chasing in January a 16-year-old suspected of throwing stones at Palestinians, and his car was crashed. Since January, there have been many attacks on Palestinians in the area for this death and stones thrown against police, who settlers claim rammed the youth's car. The Israeli election is coming up on March 23rd. Other than the joint list, which is made up of Israeli citizens who are Palestinians, the choices are the Zionist right, the hard right, and the ultra-right. Netanyahu has said he will put members of the ultra-right in his governing coalition, including the Jewish Power Party, which models itself after the late Rabbi Meir Kahane. Kahane was a native of Brooklyn, New York, and a friend with a leader of the Colombo crime family. He was once convicted of conspiracy for assembling elements of bombs, but was only given a suspended sentence. He relocated to Israel and was elected to the Israeli Knesset for one term. In those days, and this is the mid-1980s, when he got up to speak, almost everyone else cleared the room. But now it's 2021, and his spiritual children or grandchildren will now probably be in the next Netanyahu government. It is expected that if Netanyahu can cobble together a governing coalition, he will fire the Attorney General who indicted him and put in a new Attorney General and top legal officers, and that will be the end of his corruption trial, or maybe it will just be postponed indefinitely. Trigger warning. The following video shows images of a Palestinian man after he was gravely wounded by Israeli IDF rifle fire. It took place on March 19th, and the images show the man being carried away. He was Atef Yousef Hanaysha. He was 45, the Imam of a local mosque in a village near Nablus.
شوي شوي شباب لا قوة إلا بالله يا شيخ عطيف
And this article in Haaretz, which says that Israeli health authorities throw away hundreds of doses of vaccine when Israelis don't show up for appointments. This at a time when Palestinian hospitals are jammed with people with the coronavirus, and when talk of getting 5,000 doses of the vaccine to the Palestinians comes up for serious debate. In Egypt, crowds dared to demonstrate after a policeman beat a man to death in his own store. two videos about Syria, one about prisons, the other about Rukban, both from the Syrian Emergency Task Force.
Yeah, my name's Sam Goodwin. I was detained on on false charges in Syria in 2019, and I spent the first half of my captivity held in solitary confinement. And during this time, I never saw another inmate, but every day I would hear the sounds of them being beaten in neighboring cells. And these are sounds that I'll never forget. I was later reassigned to a large federal prison and kept with thousands of other Syrians. These men were among the most welcoming, kind, and overall remarkable people I've met anywhere in the world. I remember one evening mentioning to a fellow inmate, everyone here is being so nice to me, and it was just hard to expect what you might find in a Syrian prison. And he said, Sam, in Syria, all the good people are here in prison because all the bad people are outside putting us in here. Again, words I'll never forget. Thank God, and thanks to countless people who worked tirelessly for my safe release, I'm here today. But many are not. Many are still missing in these horrific conditions. So let this be a reminder that there's always more work to do. I will now read a letter that we were, in somewhat unprecedented fashion, able to obtain from a current Syrian detainee being held in a civilian prison. As kids, we were always told to be patient over the challenges we face, as one day we will turn these challenges into stories to tell our children. And when I was detained, my fellow inmates would always tell me that our only revenge would be to tell our stories. One day, they said. So here I am, taking the only revenge I can get. I write to you today as we approach the 10th anniversary of the uprising and the 9th anniversary of the last kiss I gave to my mother's hands. In 2012, I was told effectively by Syrian intelligence officers that I should remember the day I was detained as my new birthday, and that they would make sure I would want to forget it. They marked the days on my feet, fingernails, and a month's worth of hands. How lucky I am it was only early March. Over the years, I've witnessed death more times than I can count, and I've seen it face to face. We became so familiar with each other, but I always stayed sharp to remember the faces, the names, and the stories behind it to be able to tell it one day to my kids and to the world. In March of 2011, we have decided to break the chains we were born with and to tell those who enslaved us that we were made to be free, and to tell the world, and you who are reading my letter today, that we belong to a world where we are not punished for thinking differently, for demanding dignity and freedom, for wanting a responsible government, and for yearning to walk tall as every being on this earth is meant to. Since I moved here 4 years ago, I was told by the new arrivals that the walls of silence around Syria have been destroyed. I heard about the children who were gassed by sarin in their sleep. I heard about the villages that were destroyed by barrel bombs. I heard about the millions who have flown their children to the sea so they can get a merciful death, better than the one we see here every day. And I heard about the images that you've all seen, the images of those who have cried over the years, the images of those who were luckier than us. So I wonder, as I quickly put this together, why do I write to you what you already know? Why do I write what you already know and what you have already heard? I wonder how many more need to die of torture, of bombardment, and of hopelessness. How many generations would need to continue to live in fear? I know you know the answer. Do not let us down.
تواتي تعرفوا انتم حالها الوضع مخيم ضعيف وعلى الله وعليكم يا سيد تعرف يعني والله يحب خبز ومي وإشي يعني هيك قليل تانشي برقة الخبز ما من طولها وفتت هالرسالة كيف هالعيالنا ما معنا والله يا سيد تعرف انت يعني وعندي بنية معاقب تعرف على قد الحال والله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. احنا هون في مخيم الركبان حاصرين، لا أدوية لا قوة لا حليب لهالأطفال، مواد غذائية مواد أطباء خالص يعني لا طبابة لا أدوية، كل شيء ما في موجود عندنا. بنتي عمرها 4 شهور 5 شهور طل شلون حلتها يا لا حليب لا إشي يعني بدنا حليب بدنا أدوية لهالأطفال بدنا إحنا الكبار مرضانين يعني لا دواء ولا القلب لا إشي مرضانين يعني وما في وسيلة إننا يعني نشتري أدوية وبالنار وما في موجود إشي والله كثير حالتنا سيئة بهالمخيم. يا أهل الخير اللي بي الله ينطيكم الله يجزيكم الخير اللي تقدروا عليه ابعثوا لنا إياه يعني أطفالنا والله نشفت لا أدوية لا حليب لا إشي ويعطيكم العافية.
واحنا مستشرين خيركم ونريد منكم خير ونريد منكم مي ونريد
By the way, there was a very good panel on Syria with Yasser Munaf and Lisa Wadeen. Go to RPM.world for links to the video.
Martial law has been declared in more parts of Burma as the military junta intensifies its crackdown following the February 1st coup. According to one Burmese group, at least 217 protesters have been killed. Over 2,000 have been arrested or detained since the coup began. On Sunday, at least 38 people were killed in the deadliest day of political violence so far. But protests are continuing across the country.
The military announced martial law, which means they have declared war, and it gave them authority to access people's properties or do whatever they want. Building these barricades, it protects us to some extent, and it is the only type of security we can do.
The military is also cracking down on communications. Much of Burma is under an internet blackout, and independent newspapers have stopped publishing. Last week, all 15 nations of the UN Security Council issued a joint statement condemning the, quote, violence against peaceful protesters, including against women, youth, and children. China and Russia back the UN statement. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has accused the military of torturing prisoners.
At least 5 deaths in custody have occurred in recent weeks, and at least 2 victims' bodies have shown signs of severe physical abuse, indicating that they were tortured. We are deeply disturbed that the crackdown continues to intensify, and we again call on the military to stop killing and detaining protesters.
Despite the international criticism, the Burmese military is intensifying its grip on power. Earlier today, additional charges were filed against the ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Meanwhile, Burma's UN ambassador, Chow Mo-Toon, has been charged with treason following his remarks last month at the UN condemning the coup. We go now to Geneva, Switzerland, where we're joined by Wei Nin. She's a Burmese human rights activist with Burma Campaign UK. She's the daughter of a longtime Burmese dissident who's the former student leader and political prisoner who's been detained since the start of the coup. We welcome you to Democracy Now, Wei Nin. Thank you so much for joining us. Explain what's happening on the ground, the massive assault on protesters, and also what's happening with your father, a well-known now political prisoner.
Thank you so much for having me on your program. It's been 46 days since the coup took over my country, Burma. And every day people are protesting on the streets, and every day they are being killed by the police and special forces. Like you mentioned, now we have over 2,200 political prisoners inside the prison, and some of them we have no idea where they're being detained. Some of them simply disappeared because they have no contacts with family members, and their family members haven't been told their condition or their whereabouts. And protesters keep coming out on the street calling for democracy and human rights, because we don't want to live under another military dictatorship. They are risking arrest, and they know they will be shot when they go out on the street, but they're still doing it. But the military is using, increased violence against the peaceful protesters, and all the footages we've seen on the ground is really heartbreaking. And regarding my dad, he was arrested on the first day of coup on 1st of February. And since then, we have no idea where he is being detained or his whereabouts. So we are very worried about his condition as well, and also it's very hard to see, this is his third arrest. So it's very hard to see him being back in prison again.
And Weinin, although, as you said, it's very difficult to know what the situation is of political prisoners, there have been reports from human rights groups that officials from Aung San Suu Kyi's party have been badly tortured in prison, and 2 have died in custody. Could you talk about that?
Yes, so they are arresting NLD members, and they are arresting supporters of NLD, National League for Democracy party as well. So there are we have a lot of reports coming out from the country saying if they can't find the person that they want to arrest, they are arresting family members. Sometimes that can be elderly moms, or that can be daughters of the person that they want. So even if activists or NLD supporters go into hiding, they are risking their family members' life, because the military is arresting anyone they can find. And so there are 2 types of arrests going on. So they are targeting individuals like activists, journalists, and NLD members, but at the same time they are doing mass arrests, especially during the night. There is no internet from 9 o'clock to early in the morning. So during the night they are doing nightly raids and arresting peaceful protesters if they could find, and any activists that they could find. So there are 2 types of arrests going on, one targeted and one mass arrest. So that's why, it's been 45 days and we now have more than 2,200 people in prison.
Weinin, could you also respond to the joint statement that was issued by the UN Security Council last week? All 15 members supported the statement, but critics have said that the statement should have been much stronger, and China was among the countries that opposed that stronger language, including calling what's happened, the events, a coup, and possibly blocking punitive sanctions against the military government. Your response to last week's statement?
I would say that, people inside the country are risking their lives. They're going out protesting, and they are calling, all the signs are written in English because they want the international community to help. So when we see statements from the UN Security Council and other international community, it started off being as an encouragement for us. But now, over a month, all these statements mean frustrations rather than encouragement, because we are calling for international community to help because we know that they can, and we are calling them to do targeted sanctions on military companies and global arms embargoes. Of course, China and Russia has always been the problem, but the argument is that China. The reality is China is using its veto power in the UN Security Council because in return they are getting cheap access to the natural resources we have in my country. So they're doing it for their own pocket. And as a country like the US and the UK, you have the power to lead other nations to follow with targeted economic sanctions on military companies. That's why we are calling for international community help, because we know that you can help.
And Russia did back the UN resolution condemning the violence. Is that right, Weinin?
Yes, but of course they know the statement has no sway over the military. They keep issuing statements after statements, or we condemn this violence, we condemn this arrest.
I want to ask you.
Has changed.
I want to ask you about that violence, and I want to warn our viewers that we're going to show very graphic violence on the ground, but the level of the violence against the protesters and just who the protesters are, the number of young people who are out in the streets, and also the way the protest is now filtering out through all of society in Burma, the farmers out in rural areas and others weighing in.
Everyone is coming out on the street because this is not the first time of our struggle for democracy. We have been through that many times before. And this time, people are very adamant that we don't want to live under another military dictatorship.
And as we're told that spring is coming to the northeast, these photos from the New York Botanical Garden 2 years ago, the last full month of March that it was open. That's our program for today. Stay safe, folks, but stay active. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.